In the field of Jungian psychology, there exists a concept called the collective unconscious, which, to put very simply, was the idea of a shared unconsciousness between all people that is populated by both natural-born instincts as well as ancient archetypes. Carl Jung coined this idea in hopes of explaining the similar themes found between mythologies, cultures, and people all around the world. And while this theory has been criticized for its somewhat unscientific or mystical premise, it has gone on to influence and inspire a good number of different media, either directly, like the Persona series, or indirectly in the form of the dangerous, degenerate, deal-dishing devils of Chainsaw Man, who find themselves fueled by this concept in a way. Though, they are much more than that, and I wanted to look more closely into the information that we have been given throughout the series and dissect exactly how do devils work in Chainsaw Man. Now this video contains spoilers for Chainsaw Man up to and during the current arc of the manga in part 2 as of this video's release. So, if you want to avoid spoilers, you have been warned. Devils in Chainsaw Man, as well as just the concept of hell, is a rather interesting beast when you look into it, as the devils come in many different shapes and sizes throughout the series, from proper devils to empowered devils, fiends, and of course hybrids, not to mention the different classifications of devils within those specific typings, like the Four Horsemen or Primal Fears, each of these all varying in power and function, though the series has been doing a pretty good job at laying out the rules of the world in diegetic ways, but due to the nature of that, a lot of the information is presented throughout the series at different times, so sometimes rulings might get lost or forgotten. So hopefully this video will help organize the information on devils as a whole. Now, be them devils, fiends, or hybrids, they all have some things in common. The most important of them being is their supernatural physique, as all devils are capable of repairing their bodies through some sort of consumption of blood. This is true for hybrids and fiends as well. Also, all devils, including hybrids and fiends, possess some sort of supernatural ability, which is usually inspired somewhat by their name. Though one thing not possible for fiends and hybrids is the ability to create contracts, which is something all standard devils can do. This process allows them to create a sort of exchange of a piece of their power for something of the humans, though what is traded varies on the devil and how they're feeling. They can either ask for a lot or very little depending on their mood. As well, devils value things differently, like how the future devil valued Aki's death over something much more vital to him, like his 5 senses. These contracts are also strongly binding, as no devil is willing to break them, as they face death if they do so. Contracts also can't be formed between devils. This means that a fiend is also not capable of forming a contract with a devil either. The only people viable for a devil contract are humans. As well, it should be known, a devil can make multiple contracts with different people, and they aren't stuck with one person at any given time. Though, above all else, no matter the form that they live as now, it all began in a somewhat similar way, this being within the overwhelming void known as hell. As explained in the series itself, all devils are born into hell with one single thing: their names, which is based on a concept or idea. The devil is then empowered or fueled by the fear associated with that concept. An example that the series uses actually helps get across the idea rather well, as if you imagine coffee, it doesn't immediately generate a fearful image. At worst, you might imagine it burning you, whereas a car is much more dangerous, and it could easily be imagined causing great harm to you or someone else. Thus, the coffee devil would be weak, whereas the car devil would be pretty powerful. As well, oftentimes the names of these devils indicate what type of power will be associated with them. For example, the Infinity Devil can create infinitely looping hallways to trap people inside. Though, sometimes there are name puns with the abilities that don't translate so well, but usually it's pretty straightforward like that. Though, it should be known that fear isn't the only emotion that a devil can use, as they are drawn to powerful negative emotions as a whole. Some stronger devils can even use emotions outside of fear to create powerful tools to assist them. For example, the Doll Devil and War Devil have abilities that are attached to the emotion of guilt. As the stronger someone feels guilty for their actions, the more powerful the thing that they can create from them. Though, this seems to be a practice only used by devils of a certain power level, as more often than not, the weaker devils need to prioritize generating fear in order to survive. Now, devils aren't just embodiments of common fears or phobias, as one thing that some people tend to forget about devils is that their names don't need to be inherently tied to fears. Their name comes from a concept and is powered by fear, and in the world of Chainsaw Man, it can be rather unfair for some devils, as you could be born into the world as the Marshmallow Devil or Tomato Devil, which some can have some negative connotations, as there is a fear of marshmallows and tomatoes used to be seen as poisonous. These are examples where their positive connotations heavily outweigh the negative ones, as positive emotions have a draining effect on devils, as the less their name is feared, the weaker they become, which can mean that as the public perception of things change, the power of the devil is affected as well. For example, guns. It is easy to generate a scary mental image involving guns, which means that the gun devil is pretty powerful on its own. But due in part to guns also being seen as an important tool of protection, the positive image around them likely helped keep the gun devil in check for a good amount of time. Though, after a hugely publicized terrorist attack involving guns, it created a momentary wealth of fear spread across the globe that funneled into the gun devil, resulting in an unheard of surge of power that allowed it to conduct its infamous 5-minute massacre, which retroactively not only increased the fear of guns, but also the general fear of devils around the world. This leads not only to a restriction on guns in the future, but also seemingly changed how news broadcasts in the universe work, where they tend to avoid reporting in ways that might incite fear of some kind, as once a devil is strong enough, it's hard to stop the negative feedback loop that they can generate to gain more and more strength. We've even seen that people have grown accustomed to ignoring the words of fearmongers in Part 2, which ironically comes at the same time that we hear the new statistics that devils are the leading cause of death for people around the world, which also brings up how devils tend to fight, as they wish to make a person that they are hunting as afraid of them as possible, as the more scared and emotional you get, the stronger the devil becomes while it fights you. This is why Kishibe says, the hunters that devils fear most are those who are a little crazy, as they oftentimes don't fear death, and it's really hard to predict and mess with them. Though, for the less fortunate devils with weaker powers, they aren't entirely out of options when it comes to hunting people, as, if they're lucky, they may end up consuming a piece of a much more powerful devil that can grant them an immense boost in power, and sometimes even gain a piece of that stronger devil's ability as their own. The most common example found throughout the series is the fragments of the gun devil. These can be viewed as empowered devils, ones which can break your normal expectations you might first imagine when you think of their name. Though, even then, weaker devils will still likely find themselves subjected to the life and death cycle of the world more often than not, which in itself is a rather interesting trait of all devils. As Angel Devil describes it, when a devil dies in hell, they are reborn on Earth with their memories mostly erased. They don't remember hell, but they do remember that they came from it. Angel essentially comparing it to a mother's womb. Though, if a devil was to die on Earth, as long as the concept which their name originates from still exists and is remembered by the collective unconscious, then they will be reborn in hell. But, much like with their Earth rebirth, they will basically spawn in with a new identity again. Though, in some cases, devils may retain memories or aspects of their original form, as we've seen with Beam, who recognizes Denji as Lord Chainsaw, but this is not always the case. Though Angel says that most devils in the Public Safety Division do remember one thing of hell all the same. They remember a distinct sound of the revving of a chainsaw before their death. Now, examples of devils that we've seen die and be reborn so far in the series are Typhoon, Bat, and of course, Control. As well, it is assumed that most devils who appear on Earth have died at least once in their life. This rebirth process also seemingly causes them to change physically as well, as in Part 2, when we're reintroduced to the Bat Devil, their physical appearance has changed considerably since Denji last fought them. As well, how Power describes devils, those who are reborn in hell aren't the same as they are when they die, and it's this process of life and death that has led to some weaker devils, like Bucky for instance, finding Earth to be a much more favorable alternative to hell. Cause, I mean, can you imagine how long Bucky lasts when he spawns in hell? Dude's getting spawn camped, no doubt. This is even the case for perceivably stronger devils like Bat, who could easily prey on humans, but wouldn't be considered all that powerful compared to those who stay in Hell, as he's died a minimum of 2 times already. Though, it is these attachments to their identities that they develop on Earth, or maybe sometimes in Hell, that change how devils fear death, as it becomes more about losing one's identity rather than ceasing to exist, though one could make the argument that these are more in line the same thing. This has caused devils, who fear losing who they are so much, that they'll engage in a desperate process of creating a fiend. A fiend is a human corpse being possessed by a devil. This process always leaves the head of the human deformed in some way, making fiends rather easy to spot. As well, the fiend takes on a majority of the personality of the devil that possessed the body. Now, fiends are considerably weaker than their main devil forms as well, but can still be considered on superhuman level compared to most, as fiends can retain their abilities in the fiend form, even if they are in a considerably weakened state. For example, Power, she, as the Blood Devil, used to be able to freely manipulate any blood, shaping it to her will and being a overall menace. Though, as a fiend, her ability to manipulate blood is limited to her own supply of it, and she needs to worry about using too much of it or risk going into hypervolectic shock. As well, she is not able to freely manipulate other people's blood as easily as she used to, though, if she consumes enough blood, she could regain partial amounts of her true strength. In fact, some fiends with proper strength or training can revert back to their main devil forms for a limited amount of time, though the body that a fiend takes can impact their personality to some sort of degree, as the consciousness of the person, if they weren't fully dead, may begin to influence the actions or memories of the fiend itself. As we see in the case of the Violence Fiend, he has a good amount of his human memory remaining. As well, if the host body is partially conscious, or the devil who took over them is extremely weakened, this can cause the mind to begin to merge, as we see with the Gun Fiend, and how it perceived the world. Which means that once a devil has become a fiend and died, even if they're reborn in Hell with some sort of retained memory from Earth, the person they were as a fiend will likely be lost forever. Though, in some cases, a similar process to a fiend can occur, where a devil can offer a human a contract which bestows them with power to change their physical form into something similar to that of the devils. This is a devil transformation contract, where a devil can morph and twist a human form into one of its avatars. This grants the human an immense amount of power, and allows them to use the devil's power to some capacity without the devil needing to actually be involved in some way. Though, in accepting this contract and using the transformation, your body's appearance and physiology is seemingly permanently altered, sort of like becoming a thrall in some vampire mythoses. Though, there are some cases where a devil is completely willing to merge themselves with a human host via contract. This results in a weirdly unique creation beyond fiend or transformation, called a hybrid. The actual word for it has been devoured and lost to time, so we'll use hybrid for now. A hybrid is a human who became half devil, leaving the person with a quasi-immortal and modified body. One key trait of hybrids are a part of their body will become a devil trigger, similar to how fiends have deformed heads. Though this can be any part of their body, and once the hybrid interacts with the trigger, it can cause them to transform into a devil form, while maintaining their consciousness. Some examples we've seen so far are of course Denji in his ripcord, Reze in her next grenade pin, and of course Katana Man in his wrist sheath. As well, interacting with these triggers will cause a hybrid to revive from death if they have enough blood, though outside of these factors, hybrids are the most unexplored aspect of the series I feel so far, as a majority of the ones we've seen all come from a specific breed of devils, this of course being the weapon devils, and it's unclear if other devils can create hybrids in similar ways. Though, speaking of devil types, I should discuss how only one devil of a specific name can exist at a given time. There can't be two fox devils, for instance, but just because a name is taken doesn't mean another similar but different devil devil couldn't be created as well. For example, we have the Fish Devil. This doesn't mean that specific fish can't also be the origin of devils, which we know is the case as the Shark Devil exists, and a shark is a fish. This is also a great example of how something being named after a general concept might actually end up making them weaker than a more specific name, but it also determines what abilities you might receive as well. We can also see that in the case of Longsword and Katana Devil, even though they are both swords, due to the specifications of which kinds they are, they can exist alongside each other and function in completely different ways, as people associate different things with those weapons. Which, again, speaking of the weapon devils, there are cases of devils who are born with names that carry such power that they've never experienced death themselves. These devils ascend into a higher realm than any weapon devil can ever hope to reach, and become a god hand-esque like being called the Primal Fears. Created with names related to instinctual fears found all throughout the human psyche, they are endlessly funneled with power by simply existing. An example of such is the Darkness Devil, though there are other devils who haven't been officially classified as primal fears, but do possess unique properties that make them stand out among other devils, such as the members of the Four Horsemen, this being control, famine, war, and of course, death, who, while being extremely powerful in their own right, usually, are said to be able to recount all the names of devils that have been erased from history by the Chainsaw Man, which, of course, leads us to the hero of hell himself, the Chainsaw Man, or Chainsaw Devil, which is a very strange case, as this devil possesses a unique quality that erases from the universe the name of any part of a devil it consumes. For example, Chainsaw Man consumed a devil which represented World War II as a whole, which could have been actually eaten off of the War Devil, but it's not made specifically clear at this moment. But in doing so, he has erased the war and everything tied to it from all of human history, which has resulted in an alternating timeline that we see in the series itself. There have been many other names that the Chainsaw Man has erased as well, including some that were made up entirely by Fujimoto to help the readers feel that same level of confusion that other characters had learning this information. As well, outside of his erasing ability, Chainsaw Man also is known for his durability, where it's said that no matter how many times you kill him or put him down, he always revs up his engine and gets right back up. As well, he acquired the name of the Hero of Hell because if the Chainsaw Man hears someone cry out for help, he will arrive, but in doing so, will likely kill both the problem and the one who called for him, which is why a majority of devils remember the revving of his engine before they died. This is also why a lot of people consider the Chainsaw Man to be such a hot ticket item. They want to either eliminate him from the world, as his erasing ability is true death to a devil, but also some wish to control that ability in order to shape the world to their will. But with that all said and done, this is all we know so far about how devils work in Chainsaw Man. And yet, there are still so many questions left unanswered by the series. And given how Part 2 has been expanding on ideas from Part 1, we will likely get an explanation about how devils function more deeply in the future. I know that one thing that Fujimoto wanted to go into is how the erasing feature of the Chainsaw Man actually worked. I also am interested to see if they address the possibility of reviving memories in devils in some way, or more specifically, ones who were originally fiends. I especially hope that we learn more about Hell as well. My best guess there is it's something akin to the idea of evil from Berserk, though I don't want to bog down this video with needless speculation on that front, so hopefully this helped people better understand how devils work in Chainsaw Man. I honestly just wanted to collect my own thoughts on the matter into one place, so I can sort of reference back to it in the future if I need some help. And who knows, with how Part 2 plays out, I might have to expand on this type of video in the future, and go more into depth on all the new information we learn about devils in the future. And if you want to see more videos like this in that said future, well, the best thing you do is head on over to my Patreon at patreon.com/MediNotTheBadGuy. Every little bit helps keep this channel flowing as smoothly as possible. Now, if you want to forge a contract with the Shimoneta Devil, the best place you can do that is at buyshimoneta.com.